Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
Great Scott! There's no crying in baseball!
You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey.
This is where the fun begins.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's right. We're ranking Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn is a 2020 American superhero film. It is the 8th installment in the DC Extended Universe and is a spin-off / sequel to 2016's Suicide Squad. The film follows Harley Quinn as she navigates Gotham City post-breakup with the Joker, teaming up with a group of fierce women to protect a young girl from the ruthless crime lord, Black Mask. I watched this movie when it came out in 2020, and I remember hating it when it came out. Watching it again, I didn't hate it as much. There are definitely things that redeem this movie, make it better in my eyes. I don't know if that's just because I'm a little bit older, or if it's because I made this channel and I'm looking at movies in a different light, or because I've watched worse movies since then. But let's get into it. Let's talk about it with the 10 essential aspects of a movie. First is plot. Does the movie follow a comprehensive story arc and is plausible within the world that has been created? I thought the plot of this movie had the silliness and the fun of what a Harley Quinn main character movie should have. I thought the plot of this movie was just silly enough to match her character. However, the Birds of Prey aspect to this movie, not that interesting. I didn't really care about the Birds of Prey. I thought their characters were fairly shallow and pretty uninteresting. Harley Quinn was pretty much the only one I wanted to watch in this movie, and honestly, she is the majority of this movie, but I will say the first half of this movie, it's really about her. Birds of Prey aren't necessarily in the movie, and it's much better. Now, when you get to the last half of this movie, where a lot more characters are involved, it just gets worse. I didn't love that. But I will say I did find more enjoyment in the plot of this movie than I did when I originally watched it. Second is attraction. Does the movie have an interesting premise with a high entertainment value? It does if you are a huge fan of Harley Quinn. If you love Harley Quinn, obviously you're going to love a movie that the main character is Harley Quinn. But really, this movie was very obviously made for women. This is a movie that was supposed to, show the power of women. Yeah, women can be badasses. It shoves it down your throat, honestly, for the most part. Like, it's not insane, but it's very obvious that they're trying to make these really strong, awesome women characters that are badass and can do anything. I don't have any problems with that. I just don't think they executed it all that well. I don't know how much women love this movie, again, because it's just not executed that well. There are movies out there that show women, several women, in the main character roles, and they're badasses, but they're done well. The characters are interesting. The reason that they're badasses makes sense, and they own it, and it's awesome because the plot is interesting. You root for these women not because they're women, but because they're awesome. This movie kind of wants you to root for them because they're women, not because they're all awesome. I don't know. I don't really know if women would love this movie, but it seems like that's who they were trying to make it for. Third is theme. What message or truth is a movie trying to convey? Now, this movie is it's about empowerment. It's about independence. Harley Quinn is getting away from the Joker. She has to be her own woman. It's about self-discovery. Again, this movie is made for women. It is about the self-empowerment of being a woman and how you can strive as a woman without needing any sort of man. And that's true. And I think it is a good message to have for women. I think it's a interesting message that has a really good meaning to it. The purpose of it is genuine and good, but the execution of that theme, I personally don't think it's that great. I'm not a woman. Can't really be motivated by rah-rah speeches for women and not be a woman. It's just kind of a hard thing to do, but personally I felt like they were going for a good theme, just didn't execute it all that well. Fourth is dialogue. Is there a real feel to the conversations? No, the dialogue is not really good in this movie. However, because it is a Harley Quinn movie, her dialogue kind of fits. And her dialogue is weird. And that's because it's coming from a crazy person. She is crazy. So she's just all over the place and she has these weird, witty comments, but it makes sense coming from the character of Harley Quinn. However, all the dialogue that has to do with other characters is also weird, and it just doesn't make sense for their characters, and it really doesn't feel genuine. These don't feel like real people, and I know they're not real people, but it helps for a movie. I don't think that was their point, was to make this movie overly comic book-esque. I do think they were going for a real feel in some sense, just over the top when it came to Harley Quinn. And when it's not her, I feel like it just didn't really sound that great. The conversations didn't sound real. Part of that is probably acting. These two things kind of go hand in hand. But I just really did not think the dialogue fit well, unless it was just Harley Quinn, and it just fits her because she's crazy. Fifth is acting. Are the characters convincing? Now, get the obvious out of the way. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She's great. She does a great job. I think she really captures the energy of Harley Quinn really well. I feel like she just fits this character well. She does a good job of portraying this crazy character, but she's not stupid. Harley Quinn has never been stupid. She's a doctor. And so her character has always been crazy, but she's not stupid. She's just like head over heels. And I feel like she does a good job of portraying that woman that feels like, hey, I'm smart, but how could I be so stupid at the same time? But also I'm crazy. She matches it all. She just does a really good job with this character. I feel like she took hold of what this character really represented and did her best with it, and her best is honestly pretty much perfect. I really don't know how many other people could do a better job. Now, Ewan McGregor plays Black Mask, and I don't necessarily know if I don't know if he has that much influence. I don't think he plays a good Black Mask. I think part of this is the seriousness of the movie. The movie isn't all that serious that much. But I just feel like he kind of portrayed Black Mask weird. He seems crazy, which Black Mask is kind of a crazy character. However, there's a seriousness to him that just isn't present. They kind of make him like kind of this funky guy, and I don't like that. I didn't like it. I don't know if he had much to do with that, if that's how he wanted to portray the character and they rolled with it. But I didn't love it all that much. I would have preferred a much more serious character, because that also conflicts with Harley really well, because you have somebody who's extremely serious and supposed to be dangerous, that just can't get a handle on this person that can't take anything serious and is just crazy. That works well, but they didn't really play that all that well together, and I just didn't think it was done that well. Now, Chris Messina as Zaz, I really liked him as Zaz. I thought he portrayed Zaz really well. He had this eerie feeling about him that I loved, and he had this tone that he took when he was starting to like, I don't quite know how to describe it, but he had a tone when he talked that really felt Zaz. Like, it felt like this crazy guy that kills people and then keeps track of it by cutting himself. I just feel like it takes a certain person, and he did a really good job. I would love to see him portray a much more serious version of this character. Not that this character wasn't serious in this movie. I think he actually was. He's one of the strong points as far as seriousness in this movie. But he just needs a movie that supports that as well. But I just thought he did a really good job. I would love to see him as Zaz in another circumstance. 6 is cinematography. Is there a creative use of lighting, setting, and wardrobe to convey emotion? Now, the movie, I thought, looked great for the most part. It's very bright. It has a unique feel to it. Like, this movie feels like, it has a unique way of storytelling, because it feels like Harley Quinn is telling the story. She's narrating the story quite literally, and the movie portrays it as her mind in a lot of ways, and I love that. I thought there was a lot of good choices in the colors, in the way that she would feel about situations, how she would describe them when you have this serious shot of this egg sandwich and, you know, getting plastered on the road. I mean, there's just a lot of moments that I thought really well done about portraying this movie as through the eyes and the mind of Harley Quinn. Now, the action in this movie, though I liked how much action was in it, I thought the amount was good. It just wasn't that great. The fighting sequences were not that good. They just weren't coordinated that well. I mean, you can really tell that these hits are not hitting. Like, they are not smacking people with a baseball bat. You can tell that they're just throwing themselves to the side. It just didn't look that good. There's zero emotion to this movie. It was never really serious enough for you to care. And honestly, you didn't feel like any of these characters were ever actually in jeopardy. So the movie was meant to entertain, and I feel like the theme is what was meant to take it into the cinematic, serious feelings, but it just didn't. It didn't have a seriousness to it, and it just wasn't executed well enough to have any sort of emotion. Seventh is editing, and this is all about the pace of the movie. The movie is 1 hour and 49 minutes long. I thought it was entirely too long. Hour and 49 doesn't even seem like that long, but the plot was just so incredibly not interesting towards the last half of the movie that I was really ready for it to end. They definitely should have had this movie wrap up at like 1 hour and 30 minutes. Part of the problem was introducing so many characters. I can kind of sympathize with the fact that you're trying to give a lot of characters time, but I would say you went and spent more time on characters and they still felt extremely shallow. A lot of the birds of prey felt like shallow characters. You didn't know them all that well. It felt very stereotypical. The extra time you spent introducing them wasn't worth it. It probably would have been better off spending more time with a better plot and getting to know them more, and you probably could have had a longer movie that would have felt better. It wouldn't have felt so dragged out. You wouldn't have wanted it to end because all the characters were interesting enough to keep your attention, but rather they ended somewhere in the middle, which is just probably the worst thing you can do. Eighth is soundtrack. I remember points in this movie where the soundtrack was okay, where I recognized it and thought it was kind of fun to what was going on, but it's not doing anything to really enhance the movie. Ninth is directing. Now I feel the director is in charge of the previous 8 aspects. They're the ones that have to put it all together, give it their stamp of approval, and make a good movie. Now the director of this movie was Kathy Yan, and this was her second movie. The movies that she had directed to this point were Dead Pigs and Birds of Prey. I don't know anything about Dead Pigs, never seen it, don't know anything about it. As far as this movie goes, I just don't feel like, now, I can be a little sympathetic. It's her second movie. She doesn't have that much. Probably her first. I don't know how much of a budget Dead Pigs had, but I imagine this is probably her biggest budgeted movie. Second movie, I'll give her a little bit of slack, but I feel like she made a lot of not great decisions as a director, but there's some redeemable aspects there. I thought, again, the way the story was told, I really enjoyed. I thought the colors, I thought the presentation was nice. However, there's a lot of other decisions that a director has to make that just weren't great in here. The characters weren't great. I thought some of the casting wasn't great. I can't give her credit for Margot Robbie because she was already casted as Harley Quinn in a previous movie, so she just kept her. I can't give her a whole lot of credit for much of anything other than the look. Everything else was just either mediocre or bad, and so I feel like she has some place in film because she has a good vision, especially with cinematography as far as how things look and some of the storytelling, but she made a lot of mistakes. So I'd be interested what other movies she's made, if she makes any sort of improvements on that. But honestly, I don't think she'll probably make it that long as a director, but she'll probably still make it in film, and I think that's justified. 10th is time. Will it stand the test of time? No, unfortunately, it's kind of just going to be thrown in that bucket of movies, especially superhero movies that were made for women and just kind of fell flat. I think there's been a couple of those so far. There hasn't been, it could have stood out as, hey, this is the only good all-women superhero movie. Like, they did a really good job with these characters, but instead, again, they just kind of fall flat, and it's just going to be forgotten with all those other movies. And it's also, unfortunately, in that giant genre of superhero movies where there's just a million of them, and it does not stand out. It doesn't even stand out in its own universe, let alone in all the universes with superheroes. Now for the review section. Rotten Tomatoes critics gives it a 79, the audience gives it a 78, and IMDb gives it a 61. I think I am somewhere between all of these. I think high 70s is too much. It has a lot of things wrong with it that I don't enjoy. Though they may not be huge problems, they add up. There's just a bunch of things I can complain about, very little things I can praise for. However, it's got a budget. It did decent with the budget. It had some things that I can point out that I did enjoy or thought were interesting. So I feel like this is in that 70, low C range. I feel like that's where it belongs as a movie it's a solid movie. I mean, it exists and it doesn't have a, and I'm not trashing on it, but it's not great. It has its problems that just kind of add up. Finally, for the rankings. For the year of 2020, it is the only movie I reviewed, so it's going to be first in entertainment and first in cinematography. For the decade of the 2020s, out of 40 total movies on the entertainment side, it is going to be 29th, just below Moana 2 and above It Ends With Us. Now, I have it below Moana 2, though, again, it's in that bundle of movies that I would never watch again. I wouldn't choose to watch that movie. Moana 2 is just, it also has a boring plot, but I really enjoy looking at it. I enjoyed looking at Birds of Prey as well, but I just feel like it's a little more wholesome, which is something I'm kind of drawn to. I can forgive some of the silly aspects of that movie because it is made for children, where Birds of Prey isn't. It actually has, I'm pretty sure it's R-rated, so it's totally not made for children. So in the ways that it's boring and I don't love it, I can kind of forgive it because it is a kids movie and I'm a little tolerable watching it, where Birds of Prey is made for an adult and honestly just isn't that entertaining. Now, I do have it above It Ends With Us for the seriousness. It Ends With Us is a more of a serious movie. The only reason It Ends With Us is as high as it is because I just enjoy romance. I'm a sucker for romance, and that has it in there, and there's moments I enjoy about it. But Birds of Prey has plenty of moments that I also enjoyed about it, especially in the first half, and I just think it's a much easier movie to put on and watch. Now, cinematically, out of 40 total movies, I have it 28th, just below Twisters and above The Damned. Now, I have it below Twisters because that's kind of the point in movies where I have good entertainment movies, that they were made to entertain, don't do anything cinematically all that well, or just they're not trying to do it, but they execute well, they're entertaining. Now, Birds of Prey has its problems, but I do give it credit where it does have these things that are nice to look at. Harley Quinn is a great character. It's in this world that is interesting. I think the characters had somewhat interesting backstories, but they just weren't fleshed out all that well. So it has parts to it that I can give it credit for cinematically, that it's bringing to film that are interesting, but it has its problems where the plot is boring. It has problems where dialogue is not great, where Twisters just doesn't have those problems. So I just give credit to movies that have less problems as representing film better as an art form than ones that do have problems. Now, I do have it above The Damned, and that's for its uniqueness. I do think it has a unique quality. Again, I think it has those other aspects that add to it. The Damned is not very unique at all. It's a serious movie that has some serious points that are good. It's a movie that, like, the first quarter of the movie was really interesting, but then it falls into this pool of very generic movies, and though Birds of Prey has, I would say, more problems than The Damned does. I just give it credit for it being somewhat unique and trying something different in the world, being creative. Now, all time, out of 53 total movies on the entertainment side, it is going to be 41st. Again, below Moana 2 and above It Ends With Us. It's there for the exact same reasons as before. Now, cinematically, out of 53 total movies, it is going to be 39th, just below Twisters, but above Christine. Now, I do have it above Christine, really for the production value. It's got a lot more production value. The only thing that kind of isn't great with the production is the action sequences where the fighting's not that great. But Christine is just a cheesy horror movie. It has a couple things that come into play that save it a little bit, but for the most part, it's cheesy, it's dated. It's not that great of a movie. Where Birds of Prey, it has its problems, but it also brings quite a few things to the table cinematically that I can give it some credit for. Alright, that's all I've got for Birds of Prey. I watched it again and had a little bit of a better time than original, but honestly, it's not a good movie. It could have been actually a very interesting movie because they nailed Harley Quinn with Margot Robbie, and the plot was, it had some substance there. I mean, Black Mass is a good character. Zaz is a good character. These are characters that could have gone for a good story, but they just didn't really do that great of a job with the writing. Tell me how you feel in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Did you enjoy it more than I did, or do you kind of see the problems that I have with it? It's the whole reason I made this YouTube channel, is to interact with you guys. So I really enjoy it when you guys throw a comment down. Even if you don't comment often, I'd love to hear from you, just to hear what you think about movies. If you are interested in somebody who does the exact same format as me, then check out my best friend Bosso Movie Reviews. He does the same thing where he ranks movies based on the same year, decade, and all time, except he just has a much bigger list at the moment, and he usually does older movies than I do. I've been doing a lot of 2020. I did a lot of 2024, and I'm doing a lot of 2025 movies, but he has done a lot of past movies. I'm trying to cut into the list and get those going, but make sure to comment so I can add you to the list. I can add your movie to the list and subscribe so that you can watch me review that movie. But otherwise, I'm Mr. Majoritarian. Stay classy, San Diego.